Today's topic for this month is particularly around digital advertising budgeting. It's probably relevant for many of you, especially kind of as we start to close out September. Hard to believe that September is almost over, but certainly you're probably looking and planning, doing some planning and some activities around that for next year. All right, so we thought it would be particularly relevant to talk about specifically, if you've been tasked to grow in some capacity, you probably know that you have to do some sort of advertising, so putting your arms around that and thinking about, what should you pocket or set aside for digital advertising coming down through the future. So we're going to talk through some basics from that perspective. Just a couple of introductions for those of you who don't know me. My name is Manisha Mangus. I'm Director of Consulting here at HighRoad Solution. My experience is in social media, field marketing, digital strategy. I've been doing this for over 15 years or so in the world of the association market. My particular expertise is in lead generation specifically. So typically these inbound lunch bunch sessions or webinars, part of our HighRoad U program, if you followed us in the past, usually it's just me. This particular session is special mostly because I really wanted to bring in some field experience, and I thought all of you would benefit from hearing straight from some of our practitioners out in the field, kind of like what they do and what they would think about from a budgeting standpoint. All right, so on the call with me today is Emily Wilson. She's one of our client success managers here at HighRoad Solution. She has a number of years kind of focused on paid media advertising, promoting growth from that perspective, and her specialty, certainly kind of in our wheelhouse and kind of what we do here at HighRoad. She is very kind of well versed in the world of SEO, search engine optimization, as well as Google AdWords and just overall inbound marketing strategies. So welcome, Emily. All right, so a couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. So again, we have a ton of resources available. If you haven't had a chance to explore our HighRoad U program, we really encourage that you do so. All of last year's sessions are available on demand. We have a number of toolkits that we also send. If you haven't subscribed to our Toolkit of the Month, I suggest that you do. It's very kind of handy set of tools, especially for field marketers, right? So if what we like kind of as practitioners, not having to recreate the wheel. So these toolkits in particular are really handy because you can reuse them and modify them based on what you're trying to do. If for whatever reason we experience some technical difficulties, certainly please feel just hang tight. We'll dial back in. And then, of course, if you have any questions in the chat window, certainly post them there. We'll try to answer them as we go through the presentation, or we'll handle them at the end. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. As always, usually with these sessions, I like to start with the inbound refresher because this is about inbound marketing. So if everybody recalls, or for those of you who don't know, the inbound methodology is actually a methodology that HubSpot in particular crafted and put together. And what they did is they essentially took a lot of kind of the overall marketing strategies, digital marketing strategy, content marketing strategy, and they overlay them on top of each other to essentially kind of build these pillars of part of their inbound methodology. And the idea here is that you as an organization or you as a marketer are tasked to push people through a marketing funnel. And usually they kind of fall into particular levels, right? And everything that you're doing is around either attracting strangers or visitors, taking those visitors who are no longer strangers now that they've consumed some of your information, moving them into kind of what we call the connect phase, where you're really pushing them through various funnels, various activities to turn them into leads. This is kind of where you're qualifying them to see if they really are interested in something that you have to offer. Taking then those leads and engaging with them further, kind of doing automated workflows, talking to them about lead scoring, right? Like scoring them as they go through all of your digital properties, and in turn, turning those into customers who will subsequently become your advocates by you, connecting them with them further and delighting them, right? So this is the inbound methodology. When we come to talk about essentially recruitment, right, or growth, when organizations are tasked with that, really from the methodology standpoint, your focus is kind of more towards the top end of this funnel, really around the attract activities and your functions and the connect activities, right? You want to go after the strangers, the visitors, and the leads and push them down the funnel further. All right, so from that perspective, those are specifically the audience targets that we'll be talking about today, especially when we're thinking about the world of digital advertising. We often reference this other diagram as well when we talk about inbound marketing, and specifically when we're talking about lead generation. So inside of this happy little window, we've got our happy little user, and this in and of itself, like a representation of this person being at the center of any drawing or anything that's out there, it's really kind of demonstrating a shift in modern digital marketing today, right? So you've heard likely terms of the market of one. There's a user, one particular user, that kind of person. It's all about that individual person and everything that has to do with either pleasing them, kind of pushing them down the funnel. Anything that you can collect from a data insight perspective is kind of what you want to do when you're talking about that user. So what that really means is that this person is out there sitting in the middle, and then you've got all your multiple programs, your services, your communication vehicles, all the things that you do feeding into it. You're collecting information, you're collecting kind of when they actually consume your materials, what they really like about it, what they actually do they actually buy something, do they click on it and then leave? All those things are feeding back into all of your systems. And the idea here is you're creating an environment or an ecosystem where this person is happy with everything that you're sending to interact with them. So this works really well. This model works really well for associations who are kind of in the retention mode, right? This works really well for membership communications, things where they're already the member, or possibly you're trying to lead them and convert them into becoming evangelist brand ambassadors for you. This works really well, mostly because you don't have to do anything it's predicated mostly on email. Right, their email address is known to you, so you don't have to kind of break through anything. You've got like the happy environment here. The problem with that is that you have a hole in this entire system where you don't really have any mechanisms in place to feed new people, right? So like, how do you get in front of the people who don't know anything about you? How do you get new people to occupy the space in the center where you can start to collect information about them, right? And so what we do is we adjusted this particular sketch to include kind of, here's the smart MarTech stack for those looking for growth, right? And the idea here is here's where your inbound methodology comes into play. Here's where the inbound marketing strategies really come into play, because you are looking to collect email addresses, right? If the one thing you can't do is actually email someone you don't know their email address for, you've got to go out there in the world and capture them. So the idea here is that you would do that through a combination of what we call above the line and below the line advertising. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes of what that actually means, but the idea here is that you're exposing your program, your messages, your services out to an audience that may not necessarily know what they need to know about you. So you've got to get eyeballs kind of on the game to be able to get them back into your happy ecosystem. And so that's where digital marketing comes into play, specifically around inbound and specifically around digital advertising in particular. Digital advertising is primarily kind of like one of the things that you do to grow and generate your leads and grow revenue, right? So again, from the basics, from the actual practical applications, what do you need to actually generate leads? You obviously need something really compelling to offer, right? That's kind of like one of the standard basics of inbound marketing. You need a very good offer. That's going to be your call to action. You obviously need a way to digitally connect with everyone. All your other digital activities, all your projects, everything that's working, or your campaigns that are going out there in tandem, so that you can have what we call the integrated marketing campaigns, right? So every channel that's sitting out there is aware of the campaign that you're running, and you've got a corresponding message should they come in through different channels, right? So you need to be a concerted effort in moving in the right direction all together, all at once. And certainly we recognize it's no longer kind of digital advertising is independent of the platform. You can do this across multiple channels. You don't need one particular channel to do it through, but the real kind of challenge fundamentally at the end of the day is how do you get in front of people who don't know you, right? So again, this is where digital advertising really kind of comes into the play. If you are a subscriber of HighRoad Solutions Communications, you've likely seen us over the past 4 years or so really talk about the state of digital marketing in associations, our report that we do with, in conjunction with Demand Metric. We've done this report now, or this actual study, in 4 years in a row, and we always kind of look for, what are associations doing from a digital marketing perspective. So in particular, this is coming off of our 2017 report, which you can download. I just want to kind of call out, right? This is actually just a poll of saying, you know, across everything that you do, right? From email marketing to telemarketing, you know, how do you rate the effectiveness, and what is the most effective tactic for association marketing? Email, of course, still way there up at the top. Digital marketing or advertising kind of takes, you know, it falls into the middle, right? So what's interesting is that it's peaked and valleyed kind of over time. It's kind of dropped a little bit, probably from a budgeting standpoint, just from monetarily value. Like people are, you know, budgets are constricting. That's one of the overall trends that we saw in the reports, you know, for this year, is that everyone's really careful about on what they're budgeting, where they're putting their money into. They're kind of reallocating it, right? But again, this kind of falls solidly in the middle, which is interesting because again, you know, I think year over year, we would assume that this would start to move up as more associations are being tasked with kind of the growth approach. I did talk about above the line and below the line, kind of the lingo that's used out in kind of the for-profit world. This is just, you know, simply kind of a mapping of paid versus unpaid advertising, right? So your above the line, right, is the paid media, right? Your TV, your print, your events, your actual sponsorships, and then things that you put additional money into. So Google AdWords, sponsored content, anything that you do on social that requires a dollar amount. Below the line is equivalent to the organic approach to things, right? So you've got your website. You want it to be a search engine optimized. You've got social media channels. You're either on LinkedIn. You've got a presence on LinkedIn. You're doing something on Facebook through posts. You've got possibly a blog or a microsite. You're doing all these things, all these digital activities that technically fall under kind of what we call below the line activities. In an association, what you're looking for as a marketer, you're looking to balance both, right? So you don't see a lot of unbalance, right? Or kind of like too skewed one way or another. What you're really trying to do is strike a balance between both above the line and below the line activities. If you were to do just below the line activities, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem, or it's not a problem, it's more a challenge. The challenge is that you are now at the mercy of your end user, right? It's on their time frame. Right, so when they decide to click on something, should they find their way to you? Organic, you know, organic growth through SEO is fine, right? But again, there's a factor of time limited to that. Usually, you've been tasked to do something, you probably don't have the luxury of being able to wait it out or wait for Google to come and index your site or index your new page or anything like that, right? So you do have these considerations to come into play. This is why most organizations strike that balance between both, and when they're looking at kind of saying, like, let's set out our budget, they do earmark a certain portion of money to think about the above the line, kind of the paid approach to it, simply because it helps you amplify, right, your reach. You're really trying to expand your reach, you're amplify your message and really accelerate things. One minute you kind of put some dollars behind something, the engine and everything starts right away, right? So you have that luxury to kind of a little bit of run room to be able to drive up impressions, drive up leads, right? Collect more information, collect more insights. You have that control that you don't necessarily have when you're just doing everything organically. So again, organizations typically now are starting to strike a balance between either in their entire digital portfolio, like how much of it should be allocated, what should that allocation look like, or is it through a specific key campaign, right? Is there one key campaign? Let's pilot it, let's prototype it, let's see what we get back, because clearly, you know, we need to do more with this. So why not consider that piece? So definitely kind of some factors to think about when you're putting things together. So specifically about budgeting, you know, really when it comes down to sitting down and planning this out, you know, from a digital perspective, especially in the world of advertising, it really falls down to kind of what are you trying to accomplish? Because again, you can use your channel, you can use all these different approaches that Emily will get into, right? And really kind of depends on what you're trying to do. Right, so kind of broke it out into like, are you simply trying to get brand awareness? Are you trying to get more eyeballs on the prize? Is that simply what you're trying to do? Expand your message, push your stuff out there, right, and just get people to be aware, either of your organization, one specific program, one specific event. Are you just trying to get exposure to people who may not necessarily even know that you have something to offer? The other kind of flavor is lead gen. You're looking to collect leads. You're looking for new contacts to enter into your system that you don't know about, or that you have no kind of historical background information on, right? So you're really kind of there to get, obviously, eyeballs, but you need to get them to convert. You've got to get them to a landing page. You've got to get them to something where they'll give you that email address so you can put them into your particular marketing funnels and then work them through and push them through that way. Lastly, you could be trying to do just basic data collection, which is possibly a combination of both brand awareness as well as lead gen. You're essentially trying to understand what the market is, the market ready for, the type of new program or service that you're generating or you're developing. You know, what is it that you're essentially trying to accomplish? It can, again, it can be kind of at the organizational level, it can be at the line of business level, it could be at the individual campaign level, but usually kind of that's how you slice and dice them. Their time frames are also something to consider when you're thinking about your budget, right? Do you have a short run? Do you have to put a lot? You know, it makes a difference between how much you put behind something. Obviously, the more dollars you put in, you know, naturally the higher lift in terms of impressions and just exposure that you get in return. So it's really a question of, you know, do you have a little bit of runway? Do you have no runway? Do you have to kind of take the, you know, what we call like the run and gun approach, be super lean and get out there and show results in a very short time frame? Or do you have something in mind that you think you want to play, you want to put, you know, you want to try it out, if you will, and you know that there's something that's scheduled in the future, right? So if you know the annual event is scheduled for next year, you know that you've been tasked to say like, hey, we need to go and find new people. New people, we have a certain portion of people who can continue to come back year over year. We really do have to find new people to bring to our event, right? So if you have that kind of luxury of time to kind of see that and plan for it, that also affects how much you're going to allocate in your budget from that perspective. Of course, channel makes a lot of difference as well, right? So again, what your approach is actually going to be. Are you going to go kind of the search engine optimization route? Are you going to go for pay-per-clicks? Or are you going to do more of a content marketing strategy approach from a social perspective? And then other things to think about that simply overlay on top of it, right? So the reality is that you could have everything locked up and ready to go, and it just by nature of the industry that you're in, the market that you're trying to tap into, the audience you're trying to go after, those are factors you can't really control, but you do have to kind of acknowledge that they may be more competitive. And if they're more competitive, then more people are trying to do what you're trying to do, and therefore the price tag goes up, right? The dollars, kind of like dollars per eyeballs, it will go up in that capacity, right? So when you are sitting down and looking at it, it doesn't hurt to do some sort of scoping, or, you know, kind of having someone do some sort of initial quick analysis, doing some sort of social listing. Like many organizations kind of go different routes in doing that, but something to get a better handle on kind of, you know, if we were to go that route and do a pure, you know, PPC, right? Pure, you know, pay-per-click approach, right? Are we bidding on words that are so, you know, so competitive, right? And so way out there that, you know, every bit, it's just simply too much, right? It's just too expensive to go after some of those words. You know, it affects your strategy and how you would go about things. Same thing with audience, right? So if you're going for a wider pool that's less targeted, perhaps, you know, it's cheaper. In other cases, you know, if you're on LinkedIn and you're trying to go to a very super specific audience, you know, that many other audiences or many other marketers are also going after, you know, that affects that affects kind of what you pay, right? So obviously you want to add that level. You want to add that level when you're thinking about putting together your budget from that perspective. So we're going to go into kind of what we call the evaluate mode of Inbound Lunch Bunch, and I'm going to turn it over to Emily Wilson, who is, as I said, is our Client Success Manager. And she's going to talk to you about kind of her insights from being out in the field and practicing this, doing this for some of our clients, doing this for HighRoad ourselves. So Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to build off what Manisha said, but kind of make it more tactical by channel and by budgeting kind of overall what that looks like. So I kind of wrote out what that social means. It may be you're going to be on YouTube and social to you, but you're actually building that under Google AdWords, for example. Maybe you see an ad out on LinkedIn, but it's coming from AdRoll. So it's hard to even sometimes source where these images come from is my point. And then lastly, I'll make a point is that Instagram's under Facebook. So if you're after that millennial, that younger audience, sometimes you have an event coming up and that's probably some of your biggest leads are coming from that place. You want to have a Facebook business account, so you can have those Instagram ads, and then Twitter. And then last point I'll make is that each one of these has their own way of, you want to speak to them. So like LinkedIn, obviously it's going to be a little more professional, and Instagram is going to be maybe a little more young, more visual and fun. And then one more point I'll make before we go forward is YouTube, probably on this list, I would say, is one of these interesting places that could be your best bet for brand awareness and lift. And that's because it's free completely until someone clicks on your ad or watches it for a certain amount of time. So just some points there. So the next one. So I just put, you've seen these, you've done Google searches, you've seen these ads, perhaps you're the person that skips right down to the bottom. My point is that not every keyword is the same, and these are on the back end, you're building these out by way of keyword lists, and it's kind of like an SEO mindset. How does the in-person either look up my event or look up my organization? How does that college student find out about the association specific to their needs? This is just injured lawyer VB. This is an example of probably one of the most expensive keywords. Lawyers pay the most as far as I understand. I'll go to the next slide about how much a keyword generally is and how to think about budgeting, but this is kind of the first 4 ads. And then last thing I'll say is you see that you've got 4 ads here, and then below here is actually where the organic results show up. And then maybe on the right-hand side, there's an ad or 2. So that's called like first or second position, and you get all the analytics to show how your ads are performing. So my goal is never to be this first one, Montagna Law, right? He paid the most for his keyword that I showed up for. And so to be competitive and get the same results, maybe you want to be the second or third position, especially for nonprofits. You want to get the most efficient results for your budget and how much you're spending. So you can tweak it and optimize it, but number 1 spot isn't the end goal here. Maybe second or third, you get just as good conversions and information. Here's a nice ad. This is the Google display. So under Google AdWords, a couple other points there. You have Google text ads. Those are the ads I just showed a minute ago. They're very simple. You can have links in there. They're short, concise. They're kind of like Twitter, the only certain amount of letters or characters you can have in the ads. You want to get your point across and also stand out. And then under Google also, you'll have Google display ads, and they'll have different metrics for each one. This is a picture of Fast Company. I know they have ads on their site all the time, so I picked one up. This actually has several slides to it, so I just grabbed one, but in a second it would have gone to the next slide with the call to action on it to show in the ad. And these are targeted on the website. So maybe it's either by the content on the website or the specific site. You can, if you're a nonprofit and maybe you know your audience is reading association now, you can follow that website. Maybe there's maybe Forbes or Time are good examples of news sites you want to follow. They also can be really competitive, so that's where that competitiveness and reach comes into play. And then since I am so involved with associations, I get ads that you guys might see, this is a video ad that plays right in my feed for association management software. I thought it was a nice example of a really engaging ad that would kind of grab my attention. This is actually put out there so I couldn't necessarily tell. It's either by Google with YouTube or another one called Ad Network Video Display, which you'll find that there's different ways to reach your audience. Again, it's highly targeted towards me based on probably my search behavior. And so just to point out where these ads can show up in your feed, the Google display, the text ads, and then video are some examples. All right, so a lot of words, I'll go through it. This is just because I spent a lot of time in AdWords. It changes from month to month. They have updates and different options that change, but in all, it remains around the same principles. The same auction occurs, the same kind of metrics are there so you can optimize for. So to ease any kind of fears, it's anything you advertise with in digital advertising on either social or Google AdWords, you can change your budget at any time. Now, if you're the type of person that logs in once and want to forget it, you can just get your goals straight in the beginning, and that's an option as well. But if you're on, ideally, you're going in there daily, bi-weekly, optimizing, seeing results, and making changes based off those results. But the point is that if you set your goal or a budget at a certain level and for a certain amount of time, you can always go back and say, no, I'm going to adjust that, I'm not getting the results I need. Or if I doubled it, maybe I'll get that conversion is worth it to me. So once you set your budget, you're going to break it down daily, monthly, even yearly. So if you've got that yearly plan in place, have at it. It's awesome. You're actually going to break it down daily by month. So if I have a $500 budget for the month, I'm going to break it down to maybe $25 a day or whatever that actually adds up to. And that actual spend will be the max spend for that day at the auction that goes with all the other ads for the keywords that you're after or any kind of targeting that you put in place. So another point of that is you have a keyword max bid. So it's one of the levers you have to optimize your account. So if you start thinking of what works for you inside your keyword strategy, and if you don't have one, that's going to be part of this process is doing a kind of a keywords research project and getting what your top 30 keywords are you want to go after. And then you have a max bid, and that's where the program kind of helps you along. It kind of gives you some suggestions of what's not going to get you shown. It'll kind of show up in red and say you need to bid a little bit higher, and if you can choose at that time. So it's kind of tweaking, and it's kind of fun in a way if you're really into kind of optimizing and getting better results and seeing your hard work repay, because I think it's a good investment of money. So ballparks here, I think for $1,000 a month for 1 month, I think is kind of a good place to start. So that's even for mid associations or mid organizations from the for-profit market. That's a good ballpark. You can go a little bit lower than that. I just would kind of use that as a number to kind of think about to really get results. If you're putting on a big event and let's say you put that out there, you're going to get several thousand impressions and clicks and some definite results. And the whole idea is that it's all around the kind of an omni-channel campaign where you do have a landing page, and you do have branded material like emails or print that's going out there to match this. So it's a kind of a full force campaign. For a reference, the 501c3, the nonprofits are getting this Google Grants program, and you do have to qualify for it. You do have to have a certain website that's been out for a certain amount of months. There's a couple other criteria. Once you set it up, you have to log in at least once a week in order to keep it. But that actually goes out to up to $10,000 in free spend a month. And I call it like Google gumdrops, like in their own gumball machine. Like it's not real money, but it's of that much value to the organization. So that's an option there. If if a 501c6 or association, whatever your organization is organized under, if you can open up a 501c3, there's an option to get to this program. And then one caveat is that there's a max bid of $2 per keyword. So just to review a couple of slides back, when I showed the injury lawyer looking at that keyword, I mean, that keyword can go upwards of $100, but to bring it home as an example, if that lawyer were to get that client and that click, maybe that case wins him a much greater amount for conversion. So that's kind of thinking in a full picture of what could happen from that. So next, I was just going to talk about kind of what an average click, because your paying cost per click, that's what PPC stands for, pay per click. And the idea here is that it's between $1 and $2. So you're not going to actually get that high usually, especially in the nonprofit market. But how you probably want more relevant traffic. So if you're just going after keywords that are shorter and more competitive, the idea is maybe work with what they call a long tail keyword, and that just gets into more words, 2-3 words. It could be your organization's industry plus a specific state or city if you want to get location based, and that makes it a long tail, putting that plus in there and having that more than one keyword in there. And then that becomes lower for a keyword, you become more competitive and you show up for that. It's a whole strategy around the keyword SEO stuff. And then to go a step further, the display network. So again, Google AdWords is just the text ads you see on search pages. And the Google display are those visual ads that find you all over the internet. It could be on Amazon, it shows up there. You can look up a jacket somewhere and it keeps following you. That's a display network. Either it's retargeting and finding you, or it's actually targeting a specific website and behavior and other targeting methods. And so that has a little bit different metric methodology in that you make it a lower click-through rate because you're having a lot more visual impressions, and you're going to pay a little bit less per click on the ad just because you have so many more impressions of it. That could also be anything visual here, like the YouTube video or this display network, are good for brand awareness, but also for driving conversions as well. And then the final amount you decide on depends on your industry and the cost per click you'll find. So I think it's some learning in the beginning, if it's kind of stepping into this super green, is you get some ideas of how much your keywords are. And then I'll add to that, when you start doing competitive analysis and looking into associations that are like you, look like you, feel like you can start kind of mimicking what they do and getting an idea of how much they pay for keywords. So it becomes a learning process in general, and it's really good knowledge for your organic. It kind of feeds itself. It feeds your organic strategies as well as your paid strategies, and you become more sophisticated in the keywords that you're being searched for and the web pages that you're after when you do that competitive analysis. So it gets a good picture of your industry as a whole, and then kind of, it may not be too much, a little competition and associations, more so it's just about getting the attention span and being seen and getting the clicks and the eyeballs. So you're probably asking, I mentioned the auction. How does it work? The couple factors that play in here, your actual CPC, that's cost per click, that is either $1 and $2 on average on Google, will be determined by the ad rank. And the ad rank is consisting of either the next highest bid below you and also your quality score. A quality score is, so taking a step back, the beginning of this process, you're going to have a strategy in place, right? Your content strategy. You're going to have maybe a landing page that matches exactly what your ad is after. It only has that one call to action that's driving home exactly the action you want to happen. The idea here is that quality score, for example, would go down from a ranking of 1 to 10 if you just sent them to your homepage. It would not provide a great experience. Google considers that a poor experience and a poor quality score, and then they'll not show your ad the next time. So the idea here is to really get driven home on a specific landing page, a specific ad that really speaks to that landing page and what your organization is about. So, if you think about it from Google's side, they just want to have a good experience for everybody and the best experience for the ad to show, and that's what that's where they have success, and that's where you'll have success. So it's best to have that ranking. You'll have that ranking with every ad you do. Upwards of 7 plus. So it's just another factor to kind of know to optimize for and reach. So this is another long one. So YouTube, again, there's so many options. So you only pay when someone views your video and when a certain amount of ad is watched. And you get that. You get reviews of somebody who watched your ad between the beginning of it and the first 25% of it, and then you get like 25 to the quarter of it or to the half mark, and you kind of see where people were the most engaged, whether they watched it at all the way through. So it's really good. How it works is that you can really lift some free brand awareness from the ads. So they're set up through AdWords, so that's where you can do maybe a mixed approach. Maybe you have both AdWords just for searches. They're very simple and clean to set up, all the way through to videos. And a video could be anywhere from like 30 seconds long to a minute for reference. And then, so there's many different ways to advertise on YouTube, and there's different ad formats, and they're all kind of like designed to say in-stream, in-slate, and these are just different ways to say where they're placed, either within the ad, within the video, or on the sidebar, within a search of YouTube. And so and then how much time they're required to watch. So you target by including and excluding demographics. So it's a nice way to think about, there's a positive to it, like who do you exactly want here? Then you also start to kind of carve out and say, well, this means that this is not a good relevant audience for me, and kind of narrow it down. The topics can be contextual targeting. That means you're going after target topics that are within that video, and so that's what that person's type of searching. Or interests that are targeting the user, so what their interests are for finding ads. So maybe your ad will show up in a different video that's not necessarily the content of the video, but the content of the user. So it goes both ways. And so again, course keyword and then managed placement. So you could say exactly what kind of videos you want to place your ad. So it's really highly targeted is kind of the takeaway, is that you can really narrow down your audience. So I'll just make a point that Yeah, it's cool to reach 1 billion people on YouTube or Facebook, but if you reach 1,000 people that are your audience, that's the goal. Or even 100 people. You want relevant people, not everybody. It's not a blast. So again, the 4 ad formats, that's just, it's going deeper into it. Once you have a goal in place, it kind of becomes apparent which one to choose. So that's more of a step after you've had your goal and budget in place. And then for reference on YouTube, the average cost per view, you'll get a CPV score, and it'll be between 10 cents and 30 cents. So just as an idea, maybe if you spent $2,000, you've engaged with 10,000 people. So it's not brand awareness, this kind of nebulous thing that doesn't have a cold hard number to it. There is a cold hard number. It's 10,000 people saw your ad, had brand awareness of it. What's that worth to you? That's another step, going a little bit further into that value. So you can scale that back and up a little bit just to get an idea of what that would lift for you. Maybe 10,000 people in your association that is specific to a small state may not be right for the event that you have coming up, but that's just you can move those numbers around and get an idea of what your budget should be. And then LinkedIn's a little bit different. I love its targeting for associations, how you can target by title, skills, company, and geography. So if you start thinking about what kind of skills are in a specific subset of your audience, maybe it's the millennials that are starting out. They don't have those CMO or CTO or high level titles yet, but they're still starting to gain those skills. You can target that way. And then you can narrow it down by geography. I know what's also good, I haven't mentioned yet, is that for each one of these ads on either AdWords or LinkedIn, you could do an A/B test where you run maybe a couple ads in the beginning. The bigger organizations for profits will always do this. They'll run like 3 ads and then cut out the less performing ones. And what they're doing, they're testing visual, what's engaging, what's not, even copy, what's grabbing attention. So it's a nice way to kind of be really efficient and spend your money the best way you can. So the only thing with LinkedIn is that it's a minimum campaign daily bid of $10. So you can do really short, quick ads this way. So maybe it's $200 for a 2-week program, and that's just getting some lift. The idea here is, I think it's the smaller your audience, the more lift you're going to have with the budget you have, the more efficient you're going to be. So it does take some thinking of what those job titles are. So it's a little setup in the beginning, but I think it's worth it. I think you really see some results. Also with that, if you get some engagement in those ads, you have maybe some follow-up to do as far as either drip campaigns or actual direct communication with people that liked your ads or converted on your website. So budgeting for Facebook and Instagram. So again, my point here is that Facebook and Instagram, they just have so much data, and you can really target really narrow into demographics and interests. And even I think the idea here is that there's one example of somebody that targeted specifically a 30-year-old woman who was married, who worked at a company, and it turned out the audience of that was 1. And it was supposed to be a message for 1 person. So it can get so targeted. That's the idea. So it does take some strategy to think about what your audience is after, and you really want that relevant audience. Again, it goes back to that quality score. That's where you get the best results for what kind of spend you put into it. So Facebook is like that. I just point out also with both Facebook and Instagram, they have so many different visual advertising, some new ones that come out constantly. If you start spending money with them, they'll consistently tell you updates that they have and say you can do like a full page ad. Sometimes I've seen that happen, but there's the carousel ad, which I'm sure you've seen. And maybe if you have several events coming up, or even a big conference with several speakers, which I've seen, AIGA, the Association for Graphic Artists, they do this with all their speakers and show headshots of them on the carousel ads where you scroll through horizontally to see the different people. Super engaging. I think it was a really home run for them. So those are just some of the things. I think on Instagram, you have that same option with the carousel ads. So these are good for brand awareness, but also for conversions. Each one of those are a clickable link to go back to the website to sign up for that event. Instagram ads are done through Facebook Ad Manager, like I mentioned. So you're going to want to have Facebook set up, even if you don't want to set up an ad there. So that's where you'll get to Instagram. And again, multiple options for ad types. So once you get to your goal and your budget, and you've thought about the targeting, that's all before you get to the art, right? The creative fun stuff of it. But not to say that's part of the process, and being competitive and showing up above other associations, and even everything that's going on in the news feed, right? It's family and friends and all this stuff going on there. So you want to stand out with that visual piece too. Okay, to recap, maybe I'm giving this back to Manisha.
All right, thanks, Emily. So really, we wanted to kind of recap and kind of end the session, essentially kind of bringing it back to the beginning, right? So again, the idea here is that the only way to get your message in front of people who don't already know you is to expand your offering, right? So you can always do it organically, but in order to amplify and extend your reach and really kind of raise that awareness in a short order so that you can, in turn do what you really need to do, right? The fastest way to do that is to invest and to kind of start to budget for digital advertising, right? So that's really kind of the key point to go home. The idea here, again, is from a time frame perspective, it gives you the leads more quickly so that you can do whatever you need to do, right? When you're thinking about budgeting as a whole, right, Emily is kind of now she's giving you kind of like all the kind of field insights, the tips and tricks in particular. Hopefully, if you're listening, you're thinking about like Google AdWords. I'm sure, a lot of these channels, you have to know all the nuances, right? But the idea here is that you don't have to go it alone. There are many experts out there in the field. We certainly kind of do that here at HighRoad. But the idea here is that we've given you some ideas in which to kind of take back to the table so that when you are sitting down to do your planning and you are thinking about kind of, I have this bucket of money, where can I put it to use, right? You're starting to think about it from a campaign perspective, or you're thinking about it from a reach or goal perspective. The idea here is what's the best channel that's going to meet, that's going to result in kind of what you really want to do, right? So every channel has its pros and cons. Some of them are more expensive than others, but as Emily said, right, it's the conversion factor, right? It's like if you can, it's what we kind of call that lead attribution kind of model, right? So if you can actually say it was, I invested $2,000 to get 10,000 people to watch that video. Of that video, it becomes a numbers game, right? Let's say half of them actually convert, they pull into a funnel, and now I've done some sort of upsell, cross-sell. Then you can kind of take it back and give it to someone who's probably going to ask you, what's the ROI on that? Should we do it again? Right, so the common questions that you would typically get as a marketer, probably at the end of your campaigns or even while you're running them, is how effective was it? How much did it cost? What did we result in? And was it worth it? And should we do it again? Right, so any one of those, you can think about your mix, right? So your actual advertising mix that's available to you by channel. There's a ton more opportunity here and a ton more different flavors that you could do that you probably weren't exposed to before. So many different things. And we tie it back to inbound marketing. Inbound marketing is about taking your content and putting it in such a way so that you're able to pull people through. You essentially kind of put your content out there that you feel like solves a particular problem, right, for your ideal targeted persona, and then how do you kind of then move them down the funnel to be able to commit to first attract them, then to to raise awareness, to connect with them, to convert them, and then eventually kind of get them to be that brand ambassador, right? That entire process really works very well for associations with your content. Now you're thinking about it from that perspective of interactive content, right? So videos in particular, right? So I feel we get the sense that sometimes our associations that we work with they have videos, but we're not really sure what to do with them, right? There's always this discussion about like, oh my gosh, the video's too long, it's 20 minutes, nobody's gonna watch that. Or, what can we do in 5 minutes, or what can we do in 30 seconds? Who's gonna watch that, right? Emily's given you some really, really good tips on kind of like leveraging YouTube in particular. So don't forget, YouTube is one of the world's like largest search engines, right, out there. Ton of people like on YouTube. So you think about the value, kind of the stuff that you put together, right? Associations are really good at putting together and stringing together and doing that storytelling piece, right? So if you're putting the right story in front of the right audience, and as she said, like some of it's for free, why not explore that avenue, right? So the whole point here is that there is a little bit of art and science to putting together and kind of putting together your strategy, but certainly the idea here is like you're not alone. A lot of people are kind of in the same boat. Certainly there are a lot of organizations out there who can help you. We're one of them. But the idea here is to get your feet wet, right? You can play with as large as a budget or as small as a budget as you want to, but the point is that if you are being tasked with doing lead generation, as you put your whole plan together, digital advertising is kind of key part and parcel of that campaign strategy. So I think that kind of brings us to the end of our session. We hope you've enjoyed this session. Again, we encourage you to sign up for some of our other webinar series that we run as well at HighRoad U. If you have any questions, we'll leave the line open so that you can post them in the chat window. Other than that, I hope the rest of you have a great rest of the day. Thanks everyone for participating. We appreciate it.